Okay, folks, let me talk to you about some real important concepts to help you with your essay questions and help you score better, okay? So the first thing I want you to do is go ahead and copy what you have seen me put on the screen here. And that is this idea of a frame story. So go ahead and copy it in notes. And so you're just going to have it. So you should have some kind of a notebook where you're keeping track of notes and things that'll help you with your essay questions. And this concept of a frame story here is the idea of a very simple one is like you've got a story that's being told, and then somebody inside of that story tells their story. Okay, so you got a story within a story. So that's the idea of a frame story technique. In so if I ask you to kind of write about this and explain, how this is a frame story, and I might even ask you to talk about, what, how is this happening, and then also how does it benefit the story or make it richer. Let me give you some quick examples. So you've got the captain, okay, and he is the first story, and he's at sea, and his name is Captain Walton, okay, and he is on an adventure of pride. He's trying to be the very first to be famous, to get to the North Passage, the North Pole, okay. So he's got kind of his story that he's pursuing. He's writing letters to his sister. First frame, okay. He picks up this passenger who's about to die and freeze to death, and that's Victor. And Victor starts telling his story. Okay, Victor Frankenstein. So I'll just say Victor F here. And he tells his story, which is also related to pride. He wants to be the very first also to do something, to first bring life from the dead. And be famous. Okay. And then not only does Victor tell his story, but eventually he meets his wretch, his monster, that the book calls the wretch, okay? And the wretch says, "You must listen to my story," because he wants him to hear his story and then make a wife for him. So the wretch tells his story. And in his story, he meets this family, and they're called the DeLacy's, okay? And the DeLacy family is poor and sad, and there's no mom there, but there's kids, and one's called father, and he starts learning their story. The wretch does by spying on these guys. Okay, so through the crack in their their home, he's kind of in this little like a large doghouse shed thing, and he's spying through a crack in their home. And even them, there's a guy named Felix who's the son, and Felix is of all of them. That should be an E there, okay? Felix, he's the saddest, okay, and he's got this girl that he's fallen in love with named Safi, who is so Felix is Christian, put a C here, and she is Muslim. Her father's Muslim. They fall in love, and the dad disapproves, and doesn't want them together. And there's that whole story of them being separated. So you've got a story within a story within a story within a story within a story. Okay. And so young the author, Mary Shelley, okay, who wrote this story, she might have gotten a little bit carried away here in her frames. She must have really liked is it EY? Let me see here. She must, yeah, EY. She must have really liked this frame concept. Okay. Now, I want you to write this down too, real fast here. There are some interesting benefits to using this frame technique. Okay. So I'm going to kind of lay out some of them. How do they make a story more rich? Number one, okay, you get to know characters. So characters better. Now, why would that be true? Because they're telling their own story through in first person. I did this. Okay, you know them better because you get to know their thoughts, their feelings. There's definitely this benefit of in a frame story of enriching, and it's a whole story told through the perspective of somebody else. Okay. Also, some people could say you could have deeper plots. Okay, it kind of makes the story more deep and interesting. Okay, so that's kind of a benefit because it's a plot within a plot. Okay, it's not just one storyline the whole way. But there's this kind of a deeper plot, or you can say they have this chance to add depth to the story. Okay, it's richer, it's more engaging. That's another benefit to it. So you get to know characters better. You have kind of this deeper plot. And if I thought of a third benefit, what's a third benefit to the frame story technique? You know what? Let's just quit with two and call that good for now. Okay. All right. Going to move on to the next concept, and that's foreshadowing. All right. By now in literature, hopefully you've learned that foreshadowing is something that is a hint, okay, or a shadow of something that's about to take place, okay, and that's what foreshadowing is. That's why the name shadowing. Okay, so you got this shadow taking place where something is hinted that's to foretell as before that's going to happen in literature. And in nature, it happens a lot, which is the weather itself is a foreshadower of an event that's about to take place. And John Steinbeck used this technique in The Red Pony. I remember, and all kinds of other great writers will use this. So, do you remember at the very beginning of the story when Victor is trying to create life, okay, and he's trying to figure out the secret of life, and all of a sudden electricity comes and it just destroys that oak tree, and it's destroyed, okay? Well, what is that a foreshadowing of? It is a foreshadowing of the fact that he is going to become obsessed with power. Obsessed, okay? Um, he becomes obsessed with this idea of power and fame and stuff. This oak tree comes and it shatters something. His obsession ends up shattering him, okay? And in a sense, it kills him. It takes the life out of him, the humanity out of him, because he becomes so obsessed with this idea of creating life, okay? Now, on the very night that the wretch comes to life, what is it? What is the weather doing? Lightning is happening. So, and this is a foreshadowing of kind of danger, of the idea that this is going to be the beginning of the end for Victor. But you've got this lightning happening, and then you got this monster created. Monster comes to life, and remember, it's yellow eyes that open up, and it just horrifies and disgusts Victor. But and then again on the mountain, there's lightning happening on the mountain later when he kills Victor's brother, and Victor decides to go for a climb up the mountain. All of a sudden, it gets really stormy and lightning. What does that foreshadow? You've got this appearance about to happen. Okay, the appearance of the wretch is going to happen, and sure enough, there he is. Okay, he appears, and so three or four times early in the story, up to the halfway point, and then other times as well, weather, nature itself, okay, foreshadows an event that's going to take place right away. Third concept is this concept of dualism. Be sure and write this down. It's going to be an essay question, okay? And it's this idea of having two sides, two sides to a person's character, okay? In this particular example, two sides. The good side, okay, if I call it the plus side and the minus side, okay? And for Victor, he's definitely got two sides to him, okay? He's got side A, which is, he's got a certain amount of compassion. He'll listen to the story of this monster talking, and he loves Elizabeth. So he has love. He's got his friends, Vic, he's friends with, now his name escaped me, but his good buddy. So he's got his friends, Clairville, and he's a family member. He's got all these things going on in his life that are kind of positive. They're human, okay? So these are kind of his good side. But on the other side, he's got greed, okay, and he's got pride, and he's got this, he wants fame, okay? That's what he's seeking. And actually, probably the biggest fault that a lot of people see in Victor is he's somewhat of a coward, okay? I mean, how many times throughout the story does he have a chance to just put an end to this whole thing or stop it, but he kind of runs away, or he lets his have kind of a family member's what is her name, Justine, be hung, and he just kind of stands there and really doesn't stop it, and all these examples of how he's kind of a coward. So he's dualistic, okay? And you see the same thing in his wretch, okay? On the one side, On the one hand, it's intelligent, okay? It's got intellect, so I'm gonna put intel here. Um, it's got compassion, okay? Because when I say it, he, because he saves life. In fact, I'm going to put that down that he's a lifesaver. He saves that little girl from drowning, okay? Which is also a characteristic, a comparison. Victor, he wants to save lives. So you've got this comparison between the two going on here, okay? Um, so this idea of saving life, wanting love, he wants to have a companion, a mate, he's got his good side. But on the other hand, he is very vengeful. There's a nice word for it, Vengeful. And he's got all this hate stored up inside of him, because Victor won't do what he wants, and he is deadly destructive, okay? He's constantly, when he gets really mad, what does he do? He goes out and kills people and strangles people to death, and wants somebody else to suffer and be blamed, Justine to be Moritz to be blamed for him killing William and all this stuff. So he's dualistic. All right, now I'm going to choose another color here just to throw another concept just quickly on the screen. Many people think that this is a story that's got what's called a doppelganger. Okay, so you got this idea of a doppelganger is the idea of kind of a mirror, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or two sides of the same person. So the wretch is kind of a doppelganger of Victor. It mirrors his good and his bad. So you got this dualism taking place, and you got him being kind of a mirror of both the good and the bad. Okay, so those are three concepts. Dualism, the idea of being dualistic, having two sides, and both Victor and the wretch do. Foreshadowing, and that's foretelling, and we see lots of examples going on with the weather. And then you also have a framed story.